beautiful way to start an ugly video. So, as you've seen from the thumbnail and the title, I'm going to be telling you guys how to deal with toxic people today. Yeah, I'm dealing with some stuff of my own, and this is a very cathartic, non-confrontational way to go about it. And hopefully this helps you guys as well in dealing with similar situations in your own lives. So yeah, the first thing you've got to do when dealing with people, with people just in general, is sort of identify if they're behaving in a toxic way towards you. If they're normally not acting in a toxic way towards you and then suddenly are, they could just be dealing with their own stuff and are unaware of how they're acting towards you and therefore making you feel. So just letting them know might be enough to have them realize what they're doing and change it back up again. But if you are actually dealing with a toxic person, that won't happen. They won't change back for you. And then you'll know what you're dealing with, and you'll be able to deal with it in a better way. So, a couple of signs. They usually keep you guessing about what version of them you're going to get. So they sort of act with a bit of a bipolar nature. Nothing against actual bipolar people. Obviously that's a completely separate issue. But if they're not, and they just suddenly start acting in a bipolar nature towards you, then you'll know that something's not right. And then if you ask them and they just give you an answer akin to, oh, it's nothing, then you'll sort of, they'll give you enough to know that something is wrong, even though their words have said otherwise. And then when that happens, most rational people will try to do something to make them happy. And that obviously works in a toxic person's favor because that's what they want. They want you to make it all about them. They manipulate people. Is basically what it comes down to. They won't own their feelings, or in my experience, they'll tell you that they feel a certain way, and then like 2 days later that they don't feel that way, that they'd never do this particular thing, and then a week later they're back to feeling that way and wanting to do the thing that they said they wouldn't do, and it's just an emotional whiplash. And yeah, you never know which version you're gonna get. They will lie to you about doing things or the intentions behind things before they apologize to you for doing the things in the first place. So if they hurt you, and they're not going to turn around and admit that they hurt you, that would involve owning their feelings, which is something that they don't do. They will be there for you in a crisis and when you need them, but when you're happy, when you're celebrating a victory or whatever, they don't care because you don't actually need them in that moment. I've had this a couple of times with a couple of different people where it's kind of been like, hey, this really good thing happened, and then they'll turn around and they'll be like, yeah, whatever. But if something goes bad, I know straight away that I can have a 2-hour conversation with them on the phone. easy because I need them in that moment. Whereas when I'm happy, I'm just trying to spread the joy with everyone else, and they don't want to be part of that, which is a little upsetting, but that is the way it is. They'll usually leave a conversation unfinished and then just go offline, and you'll be left there like, well, what about finishing this? Like, you might be trying to make plans, and you know, you might organise to have lunch at a particular place, but they won't finish the conversation by letting you know what day or what time that they'll be free, and then the day will come and something will have come up, and they just sort of keep you on a hook. They'll also use non-toxic words in a toxic way. So yeah, the way I sort of understand this is that they will tell you what you want to hear in a way that leaves a bad taste in your mouth, so that when they tell you what they want to tell you, you will accept that as the polite way, or like the rational way to have gone about addressing that situation, which obviously works for them because they now get to do what they want to do, because they've sort of emotionally manipulated you into wanting to do that as well. They'll bring irrelevant details into conversations. So you could be talking, like my example was, you could be talking about going to lunch, and all of a sudden they'll bring up something that happened 3 weeks ago that has nothing to do with spending time together or having lunch or anything like that, and just like, what am I supposed to do with this information? This isn't helping the current conversation. Which makes it all the more frustrating when they just leave halfway through. When you're talking to them, if they don't agree with something that you've said, they'll make it about the way you're talking. So you could be trying to, you could be in the middle of a heated discussion, trying to talk some sense into them, and instead of recognizing that you're speaking logically, they will make their argument about how you're speaking aggressively towards them, which obviously is not the point, because at that moment they're speaking aggressively to you too. But if we go back a bit, they don't own their own feelings, so them being aggressive towards you is irrelevant to them. The fact that you're being aggressive is obviously a violation of human rights, the way that they react. They will exaggerate, kind of like how I just did with my last point. But they will exaggerate. They'll take things to a whole new extreme that you didn't know existed. So like, you could be just sort of like speaking firmly to them, and they'll make out that you were full on screaming them down, which are in the same vein but worlds apart. And in that way, they also emotionally manipulate. They're also... Sorry about that, I had to step out for a second. The phone rang. Bloody telemarketers. So the last point that I was making before I was interrupted is that they are judgmental. You could do one unsavory thing and they will sort of hold it against you. They'll be very judgmental about it. They'll make you feel like that one unsavory thing was the worst thing you could possibly have ever done. And if I'm being completely honest, I am probably guilty of this one as well. I don't claim to be perfect, and I think that that's part of what I'm dealing with at the moment, is am I being a toxic person to people, not just am I a victim. Because if I am being toxic to people, I don't want to be. So I need to be able to recognize this for myself, which I think is a good way to sort of go about things, is if you think that you could be doing this to other people, trying to change, because that then shows those people that you are not innately a toxic person and you are not just there to benefit from their misery or whatever. Some other signs of a basic, basic signs of a toxic person is that they will surround themselves with interpersonal problems. So the drama will sort of follow them around. There'll always be like a miscommunication with them, or a misunderstanding, or some other thing that then makes other people want to please them, and make up what they did wrong to them. Again, they try to manipulate and control you. They can be very needy, and make strong demands for your attention. I just know that at least one of the people that I deal with, or am dealing with in this regard, is gonna see this one and immediately go, well, if that's the case, you're obviously a toxic person. But if you call someone on the phone and they pick up, the socially accepted thing is that their attention will be on you and the phone call, not that they will be, talking to other people in the background, or playing video games or watching TV or anything else that will distract them from the conversation. I've had this a couple of times with a couple of different people, but I just know that at least one of them is going to try and use this against me, because that's what toxic people do. And I'm not here for it anymore. I'm done dealing with people's shit. They can be extremely critical of themselves, very particularly themselves. Sometimes they're critical of other people, but it's usually that they're critical of themselves. They take the humor out of self-deprecating humor and are just self-deprecating, which then makes you feel sorry for them, I guess, is the word I'm looking for, but it's also not. It appeals to your sense of humanity, I guess, is a better way to put it, in that you want to make them feel like they are worth something when they are telling you that they don't think that they are. And obviously that's what they want, because they want people to pay attention to them. And the other thing is that they are very unwilling to seek help or try to change their behavior. It's really funny when a toxic person is dealing with a toxic person, because instead of trying to change how they act towards other people, or even that same person that's being toxic to them, they won't want to change, but they'll complain about the situation and how they want it to change. And yet they'll make it the other person's responsibility. And if they're both toxic people, you've just got this endless cycle of no one changing but wanting the situation to change. And it's kind of hilarious in a really annoying, don't want to deal with your drama kind of way. Just to watch the round and round of accusations against each other. It is a spectacle to behold. Toxic people are usually angry about something. They might be shouting at someone, or they might threaten people. They might interrogate you with very hostile questioning, or they'll just regularly use very strong, intense language. If at first you don't succeed, I guess, I think telemarketers again. Yes, as I was saying, they will regularly use strong, intense language, which I feel is just a polite way of saying they will curse you out like you've never been cursed out before, on the daily, basically. Now, it is... I have a point that I want to bring up. I am bringing something sort of unrelated, but it does pertain to using strong language. And that is the thing on the internet, like the psychology thing of people who swear regularly tend to be smarter people. I feel like particularly toxic people who don't know better use this as a way of being like, oh, I'm smart because I say the word fuck all the time. That's not the case. If you actually read the study, it goes to show that people who speak emotively, using that language, not use it as a fill-in for any adjective ever, but people who use it emotively to convey an emotion and not just for the sake of using the word, they are the ones that are more likely to be intelligent. Because I've had people bring this argument to me plenty of times before, and it's like, just because you swear like a sailor does not mean you are Albert Einstein. However, if you are using it emotively, and it's not something you use all the time, you might love to use all the other wonderful adjectives that our language has to offer, but that's just the one that conveys that particular emotion. That is a sign that you are a smarter person. Really want to push that point across, because the amount of times I've had to argue that point to other people is insane. Anyway, we'll move on to the next point. You gotta watch for cynical people who will try to bring you down. They usually complain sort of endlessly about their lives and how hard they have it, without recognizing the fact that you also have a difficult life in your own way. You deal with things differently to them, and therefore what you find difficult, they might not. But whenever you're like, yeah, but I've got to do this and this and this and this, and you know how it is you're acting and trying to balance all those things and all those commitments, but they don't understand that, and because that might seem easy to them, they will just go, oh yeah, but you don't have to deal with this, 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 and this, and they'll just complain about it. They'll just continually make it about themselves and how bad their life is. And, well, I have some solutions for you in a moment. They are never satisfied with how you act towards them. So you might do something nice for them, but it's not enough, and they'll continually make you feel like it's not enough, and that you need to do more to be contributing to the relationship, which is ironic because they fail to contribute anything positive to the relationship. So there you are, trying to bring in some sunshine and some butterflies, and they're just bringing in the rain clouds, which is always fun. The other thing you've got to do in order to recognize toxic people is assess how you feel around them. You can ask yourself some questions like, does it seem like the person is draining my emotions? Because that's something they love to do, be an emotional leech, when my brain wants to connect to my mouth. So again, this goes back to them being sort of angry, depressive people, I guess, in how they act towards you. So you'll come in trying to live your life and be happy like everybody wants to be, and they will just sense that you are happy, and they'll suck it right out of you until you feel the way they do, because that's what they want. They want you to be like them. They want you to, they want to manipulate you. And if you're happy and, doing your own thing, particularly, they will want to quickly put an end to that. You can also ask yourself, are you afraid to say the wrong thing because of how they might react? And if that's the case, then you need to just say the thing anyway, because you are not responsible for their emotions. You can apologize, you're like, hey, I'm sorry, that's how it makes you feel, but that's how I feel. That's all you can do. No one's asking you to go out of your way to please everybody else. So you've just got to get to a point where you go, look, this is how I feel. I'm sorry if that upsets you. Sorry if that offends you. Whatever the case may be. But that's how I feel. And the last question you can ask yourself to sort of assess the situation is the person making it hard for me to listen to myself and follow my own values? Because if they've got you to the point where you no longer like yourself because you're not following your own values, there's a clear problem there with that, and you need to get yourself out of that situation ASAP. And there are a couple of ways you can do this. So the first thing you've got to do pretty much always, and this is just with any person, is just talk to them. As I mentioned before, they might be dealing with stuff and don't recognize that this is how they're acting towards you. So talking to them could be enough to change the dynamic and have them realize that they're acting in a way that doesn't make you feel comfortable around them, and that will be enough to sort of have them change themselves. So you need to express yourself effectively. You can do this by you start by listening to them first off. And I know this is like, but that's what they want sort of thing. But if you make sure to acknowledge what the person is saying before you counter it with your own views, you know that, especially within yourself, that you understand what they're trying to say to you, and therefore you can come up with sort of the ironclad counters for your situation, so that they don't really have anything else to go off, except maybe the way that you're talking to them, because they will want to find a negative to bring into it. You can also use I statements, talking about yourself and your own values and views. So if if they're constantly behaving in a particular way, and making you feel a way because of that, you can turn around and say to them, look, when you do this thing, it makes me feel, or I feel like this, and sort of bring it in that way, rather than saying, you do this and it's kind of rude, like, what the fuck. You then got to tell them how you expect to be treated, which seems like a no-brainer, but it doesn't usually happen with people. Like, I guess since it's how you expect to be treated, it's it's an expectation. Like, you go into a situation expecting to feel a particular way, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that person also expects to feel that way. So, but if the person's really toxic, that strategy might not work. But it is still good practice for setting boundaries and that sort of thing. You need to speak firmly and assertively. They will bring up the fact that you're speaking to them in a very strong way in their next argument, or in that same argument, they'll bring up the fact that you're speaking to them very strongly and that they don't appreciate it. But you do need to be firm and assertive with them. Like I'm doing at the moment, you need to try and figure out where you could use some improvement. Like if you're easily intimidated by people, or what else are the other ones that it has here? Easily intimidated, people tend to step all over you, especially if they have a toxic personality. Identifying the problem area is a first step. Reflect on some tactics for specific situations. Maybe your toxic friend asks you for, for money, and you have a hard time saying no. And then it gives ideas for what to do in this particular situation. Is you could rehearse a simple script for the next time they ask. And therefore, when it comes to speaking to them, you know that you have to be firm and assertive, and you've already got the script in your head, so you can just go for it like you are an actor on Broadway. And you need to practice responding assertively in your own life. You can use the broken record technique. I don't know why people hate sounding like a broken record, but if someone's also sounding like a broken record, like toxic people tend to do, like, this is what they want, this is what they want, this is what they want. You don't want that, so you can turn around and use it back on them and be like, no, you're not getting it, repeatedly. Where are we up to now? You need to make sure, though, that you are protecting yourself from harm. So if they make a claim about you, you need to analyze that claim and decide whether or not you think it's true. Again, they will lie to you about doing things before they apologize. And if they can make it your fault at the same time, they will do that. So if they make that claim, you need to analyze that. And if it's true, obviously make some changes to yourself. Self-improvement is a good way of protecting yourself. The other thing you can do is, if they make a claim after you've analysed it, or while you're analysing it, you can think of examples that might prove that claim wrong. So if they claim that you're never there for them, and you know full well that there was one particular time, and like a really big example of like one particular time, or a couple of littler ones where you were there for them in smaller situations. Obviously it's hard to be there for someone all the time, because everyone else has got their own work commitments, their own life commitments, all these other things that they've got to deal with, as well as having these relationships. But if you can think of good examples for when you were in contrary to their claim, then you know that they're just trying to make a lie up about you. Toxic people often, as I said before, they exaggerate, but they also make all or nothing claims as part of that. And this is to try and guilt trip you into doing what it is they want you to do. So practice thinking critically about what they say to you, and they'll never be able to pull the wool over your eyes again. The other thing you've got to do is, and they hate this, apologize to them if it's appropriate. Only if it's appropriate. If you don't feel you've done anything wrong, you can basically just tell them, sorry, but I'm not sorry. I still stand by what I did. I thought it was in everyone's best interest at the time, or what have you. And yeah, you might even be able to make a positive impression on them, give them a model to follow, and they may end up changing their ways. And if they do, that's really good, and I'm happy for you. Unfortunately, that's not my experience, and therefore that's not why I'm making this video. But if it does happen, that's really good. And then the last bit is how you behave towards them. You can set and maintain boundaries, as we sort of touched on before. Tune into and act on your own feelings. Try and avoid getting swept up in the emotional turmoil, the emotional whiplash that they'll try to put you through, and pay attention to what you feel you need. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, that's all you can do, is worry about yourself. Coming from someone who cares too much, that's a thing that I'm constantly dealing with, is when is it enough to just sort of be like, you know what, I need to focus on myself, and I can't deal with this anymore. Give yourself permission to be firm with them. I know if they're making you feel like, you know, being firm with them is a bad, horrible thing to do, sometimes you're like, I don't want to be firm with them because of how they make me feel. But I think it says somewhere later on in one of these points, short-term pain is better than long-term pain, and being firm with them, and having them call you a couple of names or whatever, ultimately is better than just sitting there and dealing with it constantly. You need to listen to your gut instinct, and if I'm gonna sneeze, I can feel it coming. If you're going against your instincts, that can also be what makes you feel horrible around this particular person. So you've got to let your instincts sort of have the final word, because ultimately, when it comes down to it, your gut knows what's going on better than you might, because your thoughts might be clouded by your emotions. But your instinct is usually correct. It is there for self-preservation, so listen to it. Asks for help. I know this is something we normally tell people that are dealing with like mental illness and stuff, but seriously, ask for help, because there comes a point where, particularly if you want to maintain a relationship with the toxic person, there comes a time where you need to just sort of tap into your support network and be like, hey, I'm dealing with this is how they're acting, what do? I need some help. Because otherwise they will just suck you of all your emotions, make you go against all your values, and before you know it, you hate yourself, and you might suddenly be dealing with mental illness as well, and depression. Mouth connect to brain. Depression sucks. It really does. I will dive into that a little more in a story time video at some point, because I have a pretty good story about how depression has affected my life. the next step is take responsibility for what you're doing. Doesn't matter if they're not. You need to take responsibility for what you're doing. So again, there are some questions that you can ask yourself, and this will usually point out if you are dealing with a toxic person as well. If you ask yourself these questions at the beginning, doesn't really matter when you ask yourself any of the questions during the whole dealing with the person thing, because each situation is different. But the questions that my internet search gave me for these ones were things like, am I usually the one keeping up communication? For me, that is a yes. I am usually the one contacting other people first. That doesn't mean that I'm only dealing with toxic people. I do have friends that just get really busy, or that they, like, I have friends that just don't plan things in advance. So, you know, they'll just sort of do a thing, and then that was the thing that they did. They won't sort of go, oh, we'll all hang out and we'll do this on this day. That's me, but that doesn't mean it has to be them. And so with those friends, I don't get to talk to them that often. That was sort of the wrong way to put that, but you get the point. Whereas other people, it's just constantly, I'm the only one messaging them first. Another question you can ask yourself is, do you often take the role of peacekeeper, cleaning up tense and difficult situations in order to maintain your relationship with them? And if you answer yes to that question, you know something needs to change, because that's not your responsibility wholly and solely. It's your job to clean up a tense and difficult situation if that tense and difficult situation is your fault. Like if you've made a mistake and it's caused this big, might have caused a big misunderstanding or whatever, it's then your responsibility to clean up that situation, because that's just like the polite thing to do. Like, you're not gonna walk into someone's house, I don't know, make yourself a sandwich and leave the kitchen in a state, use the bathroom and not flush, and then, I don't know, leave bloody... A better example, you're not going to go into someone else's house, throw a massive party in their house, and then leave without offering to clean up the mess. You made that mess. It's your responsibility. In a similar way with communication, if you've made someone feel a particular way, it's up to you to make things right. And obviously, toxic people hate this, so when you're always like, sorry, that was my fault, what can I do to make that up to you? They're obviously going to be like, cool, I get something out of this, but eventually they're going to realize that you only do it when you actually mess up. And then they'll have a difficult time trying to convince you that you messed up all the time, because that's very unlikely in a situation that involves someone that's trying to emotionally manipulate you. And the last one you can ask yourself in this situation is, does it sometimes feel like I am following around this person, handling responsibilities, or working behind the scenes to avoid anger or confrontation? And if you... Another thing too is if you sort of feel like you're being a little bit two-faced with someone, so like you'll like smile at them, and then when they turn away, you just kind of like, then that's obviously an issue as well, because you're giving them this mask of like everything's fine, and then cussing them out in your own mind because you just don't want to be there with that particular person. And I've had this quite recently, actually. And it's not a great feeling. I will be honest. I'm probably making myself out to sound like an absolute asshole, or that I'm a toxic person myself, and if that's the case, then so be it. I'm just trying to better myself. I'm not wanting to be a toxic person. So if I am, I want to change my ways. But yeah, taking responsibility for what you're doing ultimately can be a model for them to then follow, so that they can stop being a toxic person. And then the last thing that this particular site gave me was that if all else fails, it's okay to walk away. Cutting people out of your life can be a painful experience, particularly if you care about that person quite a lot. But especially in the case of toxic people, this is where I got it from before. Short-term pain can be healthier than long-term pain. So it's like ripping off a band-aid. You don't do it slowly because it's just torture. Like, I'm sure they used that in like medieval times. They just stick a big old band-aid on and then just rip it off slowly. Keeping toxic people in your life can mess with your self-esteem. And as someone who's still dealing with self-esteem issues, that's not fun. They can also mess with your finances. I am on a fast food wage. Like, I work at a fast food restaurant. So I don't have that many finances to begin with. And then they come in and they're like, hey. And it's like, well, I can't afford that. They can mess with your emotional balance. This is how they like guilt trip you into doing things. And like emotionally manipulate you, so that you... What point am I trying to make? I know I'm trying to make one. I just have suddenly drawn a mental blank halfway through making my point. Emotional balance. Yeah, so if you're usually sort of like an upbeat sort of person, a toxic person will come in and they'll flip that on its head, and they will mess with your emotional balance. You might find that you are happy within yourself and you found sort of inner peace, so to speak. They will come in, they will introduce so much drama in your life that you can no longer hear that voice in your head that says that you are content with yourself. And before you know it, you feel like you're being a cunt to everyone in your life, because that's what they want. And the other thing they can do is they can mess with your other relationships. I know this is basically an internet meme at this point, but when toxic people can no longer control you, they'll try to control how other people see you. And the problem is that by that point, they've usually met or know other people that are close to you, and they'll immediately turn around and start spreading rumors and lies and making other people believe that you're the horrible person in the situation and not them. And it does actually happen, and it fucking sucks. It's so unfair. Oh, it makes my blood actually boil. And I just... If I ever do that to someone, just, you know, kill me. Just shoot me in the head, because I'm gone. I'm done. at that point I hate myself anyway. So yeah, but if the toll of having this person in your life is too high, you've reached out to your support network, you've literally exhausted this video of all its plans and solutions, then it may be time to just plan your exit and exit stage right, because there's no way you're going to convince this person to be a good person for your sake. At that point, you have to realize that they're only in it for themselves, and that you need to just get yourself out of there. So that's all I've got for today. I hope it helped. If it did, please let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear some of your stories of how you guys have dealt with toxic people. It may even help me in dealing with the things and people that I'm dealing with at the moment. And yeah, until next time, guys. Thanks for watching the video, guys. If you liked that, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you're notified when I upload a new video. I upload every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up and share it with your friends as well. And if you want to see more content in between uploads, you can follow my Instagram at Ace of the Arts or my Tumblr at Stories Around a Campfire. And I will see you in the next video.